our studio on 24 Reed Avenue. This is John Higgins live on CHCO-TV. I'm John Higgins. Awful good to be with you. My guest on the show, I have the president of Future St. Stephen as my guest tonight. And joining me is Kendall Kadatz, right, Kendall?
That's correct.
Did I say that right?
You got it.
Again, Kendall is the president of Future St. Stephen. Awful good to have you here, Kendall. Thanks. Kendall's going to explain to us just, well, number one, Kendall, there's a lot happening in St. Stephen right now. Mm-hmm. There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, okay, you're the president. Mm-hmm. Are you from, you're not from here?
No, I'm from the other side of the country.
Okay.
From Alberta.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm. And I've been here for 15 years, so I'm still from away.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't know if there is a certain time limit on that. No, is there? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. There's a complicated calculation, but yeah.
Yeah, really. So, the Future St. Stephen. Tell everybody, what's that all about?
Future St. Stephen, if I try and summarize it, it's the local economic development agency with more of a focus on community development than traditional economic development agencies. So a lot of people think of economic development agencies and you're bringing in businesses, you're getting new buildings up, you're getting factories, you're, all that kind of stuff, and
right.
That's the primary focus. Part of it, I think, being in a small community, it becomes more complex than that, and because everybody does a little bit of everything in a small community, and there's not just like one job for one thing. So part of that, I think community development gets brought in a little bit, but the other piece is that good economic development includes community development. And because who cares if there's, all the jobs in the world, but the housing is terrible and there's no parks and people hate living there. There's no sense of community, because that's what people want. They want all of those things. You want the job, you want the places to go shop, you want to recognize people when you walk down the street, you want to have fun events that involve local artists. That's what we want. You want the whole package, and so economic development has to pair with community development or it doesn't work. So that's kind of the thought, and because I'm the only employee there, then I only have so much time. So a lot of my job is facilitation of any one thing, including economic development, rather than doing one thing. So as soon as I take on one project, it takes over almost all of my time, but we have to keep a lot of things moving in the background. So we connect people together, see opportunities. That's a lot of what Future St. Stephen does. So
really?
Yeah.
So once again, from Alberta,
mm-hmm.
How'd you end up here?
Well,
how did this happen?
It was very simple. I got married with my wife, Shelley, mm-hmm. in 2005, and a friend of ours earlier that year had said, you know what, you guys should join me on an adventure. He was a good friend of mine. He said, I'm going to Korea to teach English. And I said, that's nice. No. And then the jobs that we were in at the time were social services oriented, and they're a lot of work. And we said, you know what, we could use a break. We could use a change. And then we looked at it a little more and said, let's do it. Let's start our marriage off by going to South Korea. So we got married. A couple months later, we went off to South Korea, taught English there for a year. And while we were there, we met some expats from St. Stephen's University in St. Stephen.
Okay.
Never heard of before. And they talked to us a little bit about it, and we thought, that's interesting. Interesting little place. We don't have any other plans. Let's go check it out. So we planned to come here for a year, check out the university, and then go whatever adventure we were going to have next. And instead, we didn't leave. So I completed a degree there, as did Shelley, and I took my B.Ed at UNB and my M.Ed up there, and she got a psych degree and various other small certificates, and now we're here raising a family. So, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And I would say community is the thing that brought us here. Like everyone does it in their own little way.
Can you feel that when you arrive here? Can you feel that this is community spirited? Can you feel that?
Yeah. So I'm from a farming background in Alberta.
Okay.
And I see a lot of things on the East Coast that are akin to farming communities. People know each other, help each other out, familiar with each other, know people's faces, hardworking, but then you also know how to relax. You got to relax, right? And spend time with people. And relaxing a lot of times is spending time with people. So there's a lot of crossover there. And I think that was a big draw to us out here. So, yeah.
Perfect. While we're talking, I'm just thinking of projects, things that have the Civic Center. Were you involved in that? And
not at all.
Really?
Nope. I heard about it in the background, but I was more involved with the university at that time. I spent a long time working there.
Okay.
So I know Richard Fulton well because he was in the position before me.
Yes, he
in
was.
Future St. Stephen.
Yeah.
And just know the ton of work and dedication that he put into that project. So yeah, it's really, really important for the community. And
can I ask you, projects? A lot of projects. What is considered a project? What are we working on? What's a project?
A project is anything that makes something valuable happen, right? So projects involve anything from getting business training development up and running to looking at trying to get entrepreneurship programs in the school system, to filling a certain vacant property in town, to a project I ran this year was a population study on St. Stephen, because you don't get that in between census data. And
That's
I said
excellent.
it's important to know.
Is the population of St. Stephen?
It's about 4,400.
It's down, isn't it?
It's down slightly, but I would say but not as much as Statistics Canada anticipated it would go down. So that's the good news.
Really?
But it's hard work to build small communities, small rural communities.
Why is that?
It's just been a global industrial trend for a few centuries where all of the population is drifting to larger and larger municipalities. That's where the jobs are. That's where the amenities are. You know, it's still spin-off of the Industrial Revolution in lots of different ways.
Really?
So, yeah. So people just migrate to where it feels like there's more activity happening. So the hope is that with increase in technology and the ballooning crowdedness of cities, that people start feeling the opposite, right? And we see that with, COVID now, like lots of talk of being like, oh, maybe it's time to get out of the city, and well, maybe I can work remote, and well, maybe, and all of a sudden small communities are, trying to position ourselves and say, okay, maybe now's the time to come here, start your business here, bring your job here, bring your family here, and find a more relaxed pace of life. So, yeah.
And when people are asking this, what is in St. Stephen?
What's in St. Stephen?
Right. I mean, no,
Yeah.
but that's what I hear. They say, well, I know to bring in some certain professions, they were after young professionals, and that's the first question. Do you have an arena? Do you have do you have this? Do you have that? Do you have this? And
so the Civic Center is huge to have, right?
Yeah.
Because of recreational facilities, meeting facilities. You can hold conferences there, all kinds of things like that. So it's a huge piece to have for the community. Having a hospital is huge for a community. And for, a lot of seniors look at trying to move out east, maybe a little more affordable, maybe a little quieter, maybe a little more scenic, things like that. And that's one of the first questions at the top of their list, is to say, what kind of medical facilities are accessible to me? Do I have to drive all the way to St. John or Fredericton, or can I take care of most of it here? So
speaking of that, the new apartment building that's built now.
Yep.
I hear. I mean, a lot of people that have moved away are selling their homes away because they're older now.
Yep.
And they don't want that responsibility, and they want to come back to St. Stephen. So that's a plus. I mean.
Oh, it's huge. And you were asking earlier about what Future St. Stephen's been involved in, and that's one of the key ones. So Richard reached out to that group specifically and said, "Will you come build?" Because we
seriously.
Because we knew that there was a housing issue in St. Stephen.
Right.
And there's a housing study going on right now that's going to be published by about the end of August, but on their website, SNB Housing, or Southwest New Brunswick Housing it's called, they've already published the initial data. St. Stephen has a 0.3% vacancy rate. So if you track that across Canada, there's lots of discussion in Eastern Canada. Oh, Moncton has a 2% vacancy rate, Charlottetown has a 1.5, but a 0.3 vacancy rate is just unheard of. So housing is critical in St. Stephen right
That's
now.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are things that we keep aware of, keep our our fingers in, and try to understand what's happening. They go, okay, we need to keep advocating for more housing. We need to identify spaces, attract developers, and get more housing available to people. People would see the Beacon Apartments as more like your middle income or middle to upper income housing.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, now we need some more affordable housing in the community as well to make it affordable for everybody. So that's an important piece.
And that would be what? What would that affordable housing be?
Well, when you talk to NB Housing or other associations, affordable housing tends to be that you have a certain number of units that are at a percentage below market value.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So they're actually subsidized units. And,
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's usually what affordable housing means. There's a certain number of units at a certain percentage below market level.
I see. Okay.
And that allows people to access them who otherwise couldn't.
I
So,
see.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. So.
So that's amazing. But I know these apartment buildings are full. I think.
Beacon was full. I mean, their goal was to open at the end of June there, right, and get
Yes.
people in. But COVID delays and trying to get all the final details lined up. They're still finishing it off, but they were full, I think, early to mid-June, 100% full before they opened, which is not common. Usually they're aiming to be 90 or 95% full before they open, and they were already 100%. So,
Really?
Yeah.
Now, in the affordable housing, what is it that Future St. Stephen could do to help, or is there a role that Future St. Stephen plays in this?
Oh, definitely. We would see our role as being the Southwest Brunswick Housing Group has done a great job at surveying all the landlords and looking at the information that's out there and saying, okay, here's what it is. But then they kind of hand it off to the municipality and say, because they serve several municipalities in Charlotte County. Then they hand it to the municipality and say, well, here's the information for your area, and maybe here's a good spot to build. But it's not their job to go and then say, and here's a developer, or now follow up that conversation with that developer to make sure that that development gets built. That's more something that the municipality has to take on its own. So Future St. Stephen is the development arm of the town. We're independent from the town, but serve the interests of the town. So we would look at that and say, that's important. That's part of economic and community development, because companies need to be able to have a place for their employees to work when they get here. If there's no place for them to work, then you can't really bring them here. So, if you say, move here, find an apartment, but I can't find an apartment, or I can only find some little dingy apartment somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, that's not part of the stickiness factor that makes them want to stay. You have to make them want to stay. So you need housing that's accessible to them. So we say, well, we need to get the housing into the space where there's enough vacancy that people can actually find an apartment when they come here and look. So, yeah.
That's amazing. You hear people say, oh, everybody's leaving, and they see all these houses up for sale, and they're saying, oh, there's somebody else moving away. No, they're not moving away. They're seniors or retired people moving into these apartments, which.
Yep, and it's not just retired people. The population report that we ran was really interesting because it showed that one of the highest mobility areas was the 25 to 45 age group. So they had the most people moving in to St. Stephen, but they also had the most people moving out. So we look at that as a community and we say, okay, it doesn't give us the answers on why they're moving out, but we start to ask that question. Why are those people moving? What do we need to do to keep them here and to keep those kids in our schools and to keep those people buying houses here and those people starting business here as that age group of entrepreneurs, who often would start their own businesses. Because in a small town, it's more how you have to think, less of like, where's a job for me and do I need to make my own job, right? So that's the reality of Gen X and further generations. Everyone tells you you're going to have 5 careers in your job, you're going to be part of the gig economy, there are no pensions, there are like all these kinds of things are the message that my generation and below lives with. And so how do you keep them in a community like this, right? What are the pieces that draw them and make them want to stay?
And you're trying to put those pieces together.
Yeah, as you know, the whole big complicated puzzle package.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is this, with St. Stephen being this, it's like you said, we don't have any great big auto plants. We don't have, you know, we don't have that.
Yep.
Is this like an entrepreneur's paradise to come here and start a business, or?
Not a paradise,
Yeah.
because I think everybody has to. There's pros and cons to any community. So you go into a larger city, and it's more likely you can get business somehow, right?
Yeah.
You know, I could start this business or that business, and maybe it doesn't matter too much. Because you know, in a small community, if there's 3 of the same business, well, they're going to be fighting for the same clientele. You know, 2 is probably okay, but you can't just start another 3rd or 4th business of the same thing that's going on.
Exactly.
But in a large city, you've got so much more competition that your business has to be that more refined. So small communities are a paradise in the sense that there's less competition. You don't have to be on the cutting edge to start a business in a small community versus in Toronto, for example, right?
Yeah.
Much more competition that way. So that's the benefit side of it. The not benefit side is who's your clientele? Unless you're export-based, online-based, that kind of thing, then do you have people coming through town? Like you can have a limited clientele. So how that can be the deterrent side of a business. Are there actually the people there to support the business you want to run?
That's so true.
Yeah. So again, that's one of the potential pushes and hopes for more of the online economy is to say, well, people could start a business from here, right? So, and you know, they could do something export-based because we're right on the U.S. border, that they could have and produce something here and then go across and ship it out from there. So looking at pieces like that, yeah.
It's amazing. I notice where I live, I'm right beside the walking trail.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's construction being started on the walking trail.
You betcha.
That is one of the most popular places. I walk it myself all the time. So are you involved in that? Are you involved with the improvements and just exactly what's being done?
Yeah. Future St. Stephen's been very involved with the walking trail. Not in a direct sense. We don't manage it. We don't have any authority over it. Nothing like that.
Yeah.
But Coastal Link Trails is the group that's developing the walking trail, and that trail, it's such a great story. I love it. So
before we get into the story, and it's so interesting, everybody is.
Yeah.
Let's just take a quick break.
Sounds good.
All right, and then let's talk about the walking trail.
Perfect.
All right, I'm going to be back in just a moment with Kendall here on John Higgins Live. And welcome back, John Higgins Live. My guest is the president of Future St. Stephen, Kendall Kadatz. So good to have you here. We're talking about St. Stephen just in the future, what's going to be happening. What's happening right now is we were just talking about just a few moments ago, the walking trail.
Yeah.
Looking good.
It is looking good.
So tell me what's going on.
Yeah. So the walking trail is headed by the Coastal Links Group, which we're really glad. And they were one of the groups around the province that Tourism New Brunswick gave some money to and said, hey, we need trail development. Because trail development is actually, we think of it as a social dynamic, but it's actually very much an economic dynamic as well.
So, okay.
You know, so the first perception is social, but actually it's one of those things that crosses the lines and it has economic development as well, because when you have people coming through and you have a means for them to come through, then that starts to increase some tourism potential, right? And for trails, a lot of people don't realize is the tourism potential of cycling trails. And so getting cycling trails going throughout the Maritimes. New Brunswick is trying to catch up a little bit. There's a lot of cycling trails that go in and out of Quebec and Nova Scotia and even PEI, but not so much New Brunswick. So we need a little bit more infrastructure to get our cycling tourism up to where it needs to be. So the Coastal Link Trails, the link refers to linking St. Stephen to St. John. And that's significant because the East Coast Greenway is a trail that spans the entire, it's connected trails that create this one long trail system all the way up the East Coast of the US seaboard. So you've got trails from Florida all the way up to Maine that are coming up through. And then we've got the Great Trail, which goes from Canada's west coast all the way past St. John and through off into Nova Scotia. And that's an interconnected trail system in Canada. So two of these longest trail systems in the world, St. Stephen to St. John is the piece that connects them. So that's Coastal Links. So this is a huge opportunity to actually have an infrastructure to encourage these groups, because right now there's no way for cyclists to safely travel on the highway. A lot of the trail will be highway, and Department of Transportation will add a cycling lane for it. It'll be a dedicated cycling lane. Mm-hmm. So as they do a highway upgrade, they'll do that over the next few years, and that'll get woven in. But part of it will be in St. George and St. Stephen, the municipal components of it. And so as they did studies and figured out where to go and how the trail's going to best go and what sites it's going to include, they said, okay, it's going to go from here to there. Where do we start? So before I came in, Richard from Future St. Stephen was advocating hard and saying, let's get St. Stephen as the spot to get started. So he had advocated for a study to be done that would show where the trail would go and what some of the pre-engineering would be. And that got in place, and Coastal Link started doing their work, and eventually they said, we're ready for our first place. And they said, well, St. Stephen's been pushing hard. They got a study done here. They've had a citizens group pushing this along. And they said, in the end, they did some assessment and said, we think we should start the trail in St. Stephen. And
excellent.
So that's an example of where Future St. Stephen played a role, and it's this blend. It's a community development piece. There's a lot of people that maybe wouldn't use the trail currently, walkers and strollers are harder to use on it.
Yes.
It's just not integrated along.
Yeah.
The river is one of those things that we want to be one of the pieces that we celebrate, but our trail doesn't really celebrate it. It kind of skirts along it a little bit right now, but to be able to have like a full trail that can be used by cyclists and pedestrians and strollers and seniors and everybody going up and along our whole waterfront is just really exciting.
It is, and by you mean paving it, right? I mean,
it's going to be paved. Yeah,
it's not paved now.
Yeah, it's going to be
7
foot wide. Yeah,
7 feet wide.
Yeah, so it leaves room for everybody to
Yeah.
be able to go past each other. Yeah. So.
And it'll be starting right at the bridge, right at the Ferry Point Bridge.
Yeah, it's going to start in behind those businesses there.
Yes,
In behind the cafe, down
yes.
along the waterfront
Yeah.
there. So someone can cross over the bridge
Yeah.
and just come along that little stretch on the highway, because there's not really a way to get in behind there. Get behind those buildings, and then you start, and it'll be revamped all the way along up to Dennis Stream for now. And I don't know exactly. They'll get the main trail going, and then after the main trail goes from St. Stephen to St. John, the plan is to say, okay, now what about side trails, right? Little loops here and there
Yes,
that add to
yes.
the experience,
Okay,
and locals can do that, visitors can do that. So yeah, so it's really exciting infrastructure, because I'd say two of New Brunswick's greatest assets are A, its people and its hospitality, and B, its scenery. It's just a gorgeous space. So all of a sudden you're giving access to one of New Brunswick's best assets.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
Yeah.
Did Future St. Stephen, the upgrades on the wharf, which is great now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have anything to do with that? Were you involved in?
I don't think we did.
No.
I've just been in the job for a year now.
Okay.
And my understanding is that was all that was done by the town.
The town,
Yeah. So there's sometimes where the town takes on projects and we're aware of them. I work with the mayor and the CAO on a very close basis. Sometimes they're doing projects and I'm aware, but I'm not really involved. I'm not needed for advocacy or not needed to try and pull people together. Some things do come together on their own. So,
right.
We're not responsible for everything, right?
No, exactly. Really.
Yeah. And that's one of the beautiful points too. And one of the things that we appreciate, one of the focal points of Future St. Stephen is citizenship engagement. Because if people don't have a drive on their own to help make their community better, nothing's going to happen.
Right.
It's not because some organization is magically in the background, pushing. And sure, we want to push for an attitude, we want to push for a sense and a vision of what the community can be, but we can't change who people are. We can just bring together existing ideas and try and be a catalyst and give them more momentum and help them happen faster, and maybe help idea become a little bit better. So people doing things on their own, the town taking initiative, businesses taking initiative, citizens taking initiative, that all has to happen, right? Yeah. So.
And as you just said, you work closely with the town, with the mayor, and you work and the
CAO.
and
yeah.
the CAO.
Yeah. So we're in regular dialogue about projects that might happen, or concerns for the community, and saying what's our role, what's the town's role,
Yes.
So the mayor had asked for a task force to be started because of COVID, and said, how do we bring people together? So bring the chamber together, bring the BIA, bring a few groups together, and say, what do we need to do? What is each of our roles as we respond to this? So Future St. Stephen was a part of that as well, and saying, what are some of the things we can do directly, indirectly, or just to be aware of as we go forward? And that's just one example of working together. The mayor and the CAO are also on our board. They're permanent appointee
I see.
members.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
I see. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're regularly updated on what's going on with Future St. Stephen. Yeah.
Staying on the walking trail for just a bit. There's a statue coming.
There is.
William Francis Ganong.
That's correct.
And a lot of people, I had a guest on the show too. A lot of people didn't know who William Francis Ganong was. He was an explorer, quite a guy.
He was an amazing individual.
Yeah.
He was one of maybe New Brunswick's proud moments.
Yeah,
you
he
would
mapped
say.
New Brunswick. He went into parts of New Brunswick nobody's gone before.
He
right?
mapped New Brunswick, exactly. He spent, 25 or 30 years on the rivers of New Brunswick.
Yeah.
Every summer. He was a professor down in
Massachusetts,
in
in Boston,
Massachusetts,
yeah.
But he would come up here every summer
Yeah.
and map the rivers. He did work on Passamaquoddy Bay. He did lots of kind of stuff. He was studying, flora and fauna
Yes, he
and
was.
geography.
Yeah.
He was a linguist.
Yeah.
David Ganong says he knew 5 languages, I think it
He
was.
did. Yeah.
He learned, we don't have distinct evidence of it, but we believe that he understood at least maybe Mi'kmaq and Wolastoqey, maybe Passamaquoddy, we're not sure. But he engaged effectively with the First Nations groups in the area.
Yeah, amazing.
Like a really fascinating individual. So
and I've seen actually a picture of the statue. It's neat. It's cool looking.
Yeah, it is.
And what a spot for it, right there on the river. I mean, right there on the river. So.
And that was part of the choice, to say he spent so much of his life on the river.
Right.
Why not put this right beside the river?
Exactly.
And again, as I alluded to earlier, the river is one of those things that going forward we want to highlight. Water is the lifeblood of communities, right? And cities and towns have been positioned on water, forever, and will continue to need to be. So it's like, how do we look towards that as our asset, as something that we're proud of, as something that we're excited about, And it's just one more little way of doing that.
It's funny you say that, because I was talking to a gentleman the other day, and we were talking about all of the projects now, the walking path being one of them, beside the river, the new apartment buildings going up on the river. He said years ago I never would have dreamt that it would have gone that way. That the development would have been on the river the way it is.
Well, that was our sewage lagoon.
Exactly. That's right
there,
yeah.
right? Like
that's what it was.
And so you think of, how do I get away from that?
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So thankfully that's been moved and repositioned, and then the area is allowed to be reclaimed, and Beacon found a good way to build it and connect the building to bedrock, so there's no foundation concerns.
Yeah.
So, and built it above predicted flood level heights, for the next 100 years.
Yes.
So they've taken all those things into consideration about what, good development means, and being able to access the river again. So, yeah.
Being involved, being the president of Future St. Stephen, what's not picking up? You and I are in St. Andrews right now. St. Andrews has done it, haven't they? I mean, as far as there's people, you know, it's,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful, beautiful town.
Yeah, very much.
And considered a tourist town? Yeah.
Oh yeah, St. Andrews for sure.
Now, St. Stephen never could, or could St. Stephen even touch that?
I don't think it's going to touch that, but I think it can move in that direction. And tourism development is one of the things that we're currently looking at, and I'm working with the town on. Yeah, I can be corrected by somebody from, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 years ago, but to my understanding, I don't believe we've ever had a tourism strategy for St. Stephen.
Okay.
And part of a tourism strategy is just saying, what are your assets and how are you communicating them and making them accessible to people who would be interested in those assets?
Right.
So St. Stephen does have some assets, but it's never gone through the exercise of identifying, pulling them together, packaging them, and presenting them for people. So most people would say now, oh, if you come through St. Stephen, oh, you've got the Chocolate Museum and the Chocolatier.
Right.
There's your tourism assets.
Which is true.
But we've got more than that, but it's actually just being intentional about it. So we're engaging with the COA right now in an exercise to look at setting up a tourism development strategy for St. Stephen to say, how do we fit on the map, right? One of the things is we've got the world's oldest basketball court.
Which is true.
World's oldest basketball court.
That's right.
The group that's been working with it, the board, is trying to figure out where does it go and how do they develop that into more of an asset, because right now all they've done is tried to secure it, right? They spent the first few years doing that and working with the vocational center that owns the building and saying, so what is it going to mean to turn this into a tourism asset? Because it really is one. Like the Raptors just won the NBA last year. Mm-hmm. And we have the world's oldest basketball court, and we're within 8 hours driving distance of 20 million people that have where there's a huge interest in basketball amongst them.
Exactly.
So how do we develop that? So those are things that are being worked on in the background. And okay, that could be a future key piece to St. Stephen's tourism development, you know? And then other pieces are more natural pieces that you work on and that you bring to people's attention. And Ganong Nature Park is a great example. The board there is doing more work to say, what are our next steps, you know? So we keep abreast of those conversations as well and cheer those groups on when, you know, when they ask for it or when they need it, or ask if they need a hand with something or they need a connection with somebody. That's part of what we do, because we think that St. Stephen can be, I would describe it as part of the tourism ecosystem for Charlotte County, because St. Andrews in and of itself shouldn't be all of tourism, but maybe it's the hub of tourism in Charlotte County. And then St. Stephen offers a piece, and Grand Manan offers a piece, and Campobello offers a piece, and also you've got all this beauty in the midst of the highest tides in the world.
Exactly.
And people can bump back and forth. Oh, I'll spend this day in this town and this day in this town.
That's exactly, you know.
So
speaking of that, you know, let's take a break.
Sure.
All right.
Sounds good.
We're going to be back in just a couple of minutes. It's John Higgins Live. It's so good to be talking to you, Kendall. You know, we all get pumped up. Okay, let's make this work, right?
Exactly.
President of Future St. Stephen, Kendall Kadatz. This is John Higgins Live. I'll be back with you in just a moment. And welcome back. John Higgins Live. I'm John Higgins with my guest today, Kendall Kadatz. Kendall is the president of Future St. Stephen. And as far as I can see right now, the Future St. Stephen is looking pretty good, Kendall.
Oh, well, thank you.
We, in our conversation, where are we right now? We are talking about the tourism end of it, okay? Difference, you know, Kendall just told us that there's never really been a plan, like a real outgoing plan.
That I'm aware of.
That he's aware of. So But he says that's something. Look, Kendall, that's something that will be in the works. So hopefully it's.
Yeah.
It's.
So basically, we've put together some community groups or individuals who we think would be, and I've worked with the town on this, that we think would speak well and say this is what we think tourism could be or what the current state of it is, and then interacting with a COA who has a tourism development branch. And they're going to assess that and then come back to say, okay, based on where you're at, this is what we think you could do. You've got X, and X option for how you could develop a tourism development strategy, which then lets us know. Because right now there's nobody in St. Stephen that's like, oh, I know how to do tourism. I've got this all figured out.
Right.
So we'll lean on some resources and assets and then use that information and start finding a way forward. Probably work with a consultant and help to come up with a strategy that highlights the assets that St. Stephen has and hopefully will have, continue to have in the coming years. So, yeah.
Amazing. So you work hand in hand with tourism, am I right on that? Or a partnership with tourism?
So I would say I've been working with tourism at the town's request currently, where they're saying, can Future St. Stephen help to get this process started? So when it comes back, the question will be, who owns the tourism piece? After we're finished conversing with the COA, who owns the tourism piece? And the answer might be the town. Maybe all the people look at it and they say, well, maybe the Chocolate Museum owns tourism in St. Stephen and works with everybody else. Maybe Future St. Stephen owns it. I don't know. But we're walking into that conversation loosely and then seeing what the recommendation is and figuring out who's going to lead it. So for right now, I'm holding to my initial comment of saying I facilitate, right? There's a need to push the conversation a few steps further. And that's the work that Future St. Stephen is doing right now. So I'm working more closely with tourism at this point. Doesn't necessarily mean I will be in the future, but I'm helping to move the conversation to where it needs to get. So,
tourism. I'm just trying to clarify this myself. Let's say, for example, Fredericton. They have their own tourism, don't they? Their own tourism promoting.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
But St. Stephen doesn't have.
No.
No.
We have CCRTA, the Charlotte County Regional Tourism Association.
Okay.
And they promote all of Charlotte County, which is wonderful. And so anything that St. Stephen kind of like curates, they'll take and they'll promote it to a wider audience. That's part of their role for the whole region, right? But if St. Stephen doesn't curate something or identify something or come up with its own strategy, then CCRTA can't really promote it.
There's nothing to promote.
It's not their job to walk into the communities and to identify all of the assets and develop the tourism and then go and promote it as well. That's not their role as an organization.
So whose role is that? To
each municipality, really.
Okay. It's
up to themselves to say, why would people come to our town and pull that together? And then an organization like CCRTA and an organization like New Brunswick Tourism can help with that, to promote that, but they're not going to make the thing for you, right?
Right.
So
when you say municipality, that means what? Municipality is what?
Oh man, in Charlotte County, that's a good question. Because everybody wants to consider themselves a municipality. You get 10 houses together and they want to be a municipality, right? And that's true. Just from a practical standpoint, I tend to think of the larger communities in Charlotte County. So I tend to think of a municipality as St. Stephen, St. George, St. Andrews, Blacks Harbor, Deer Island, Grand Manan, Campobello. Those are our major municipalities in Charlotte County. That's how I think. Yeah.
Do you ever work with people on the islands or?
Yeah, we just finished a great example of that. And again, it's this balance between looking after St. Stephen, but sometimes looking after St. Stephen means working together with everybody else.
Just gonna say.
Yeah. And so an example of that we just finished is the labor market report that we ran across Charlotte County. So we did a labor market report, and the request first came from the St. Stephen Chamber of Commerce to say, Future St. Stephen, can you do this to let us know what businesses need in the area to be able to succeed, right? What are the impediments in the way? What are the strengths and assets of the area? What's the workforce like? How do businesses know if this is a good place to set up business or how to conduct themselves going into the future? And then I also got a similar request from a HR consultant that works with some of the large companies across Charlotte County. And I looked at those 2 requests and I said, and talked about it with my board, and I said, if we're going to do this, I think we need to do a labor market report for all of Charlotte County, because we're so connected,
Aren't we?
And so, and realistically, people in Toronto can drive an hour and a half, 2 hours one way to go to work every day.
Mm-hmm.
You drive across Charlotte County and you're talking 40 minutes.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So there's no reason why, if there's a certain company on one corner and it's someone with a skill set on the other corner, that they can't work,
Right on.
And we look at that as how we make the most of all of the resources that are with us, the human resources, the company resources, the natural resources, and looking at all of those and how they integrate. And so we ran a labor market report. So I had the mayor of Campobello helping to promote it there. I had the Deer Island Chamber of Commerce promoting it there. Grand Manan, all the municipalities in all the major areas were working with us to draw companies in. So we have local company information. And then the New Brunswick economist David Campbell is going to be assessing that and saying, okay, what does that mean? So he's chewing over the data right now, actually, and then it'll go back to us, and we're giving those reports back out to all those municipalities and all the chambers who worked with us to say, here's the information that we have about our workforce and about our businesses in our area. Use that to inform your town policies and your bylaws to make business better, make it easier for business to work in your community. Look at this potential, these companies want to hire these kinds of people, so do you need more housing in your community as a result?
And which we do.
Yeah, which we do. So, so that's a bit of looking at economic development and saying, especially in a small area like our Charlotte County, what are we? I think between 25 and 30,000 people total.
Exactly.
And to say, we've got to work together. If we try and split off and do our own thing,
right.
We're not going to have enough momentum to get anything done, to get anyone's attention, to say this is a need. They're going to look at it and say, well, that's such a small need. I have so many needs, whether that's provincial or federal governments say that I need to service. I'm sorry, you just don't hit the top of the pile. But if you come forward as Charlotte County and
That's
say,
right.
here's our need, then you're going to get someone's attention a little bit more. So, so that's part of the thought.
Which is the economic development, right?
Yeah, exactly. Being able to create the environment where business can succeed and create jobs for people so they can live there and they can pay for their homes and
Which is
pay
what
for your local taxes so we can have our streets.
Yeah,
so
that's
we
right.
can,
That's right.
all those pieces. Yeah.
What about new businesses?
Mm-hmm. So that's a piece that Future St. Stephen's has been working hard on, and again, it creates part of the overall environment, and that's just like an ongoing, open-ended conversation about attracting business,
All
looking
the
for
time.
opportunities. Yeah,
All the time.
All the time. It's
How are we going to get new business here? How are we going to get...
or where do we see an opportunity? I heard someone talking about maybe wanting to do this, and I heard someone else maybe talking about wanting to do this. Well, maybe I should put those two people together, and maybe together, I didn't have the resources, but I have the knowledge, and I don't have as much knowledge, but I got resources. Well, maybe they can work together, and suddenly that idea can happen, versus people thinking of ideas in the background and not knowing that there's other people thinking about a similar thing.
Yes.
So that's one thing that we do. And then things like, there's an open space. Well, I heard someone wanting to talk about that business maybe. Now maybe that space would suit them, but maybe they don't want to buy it. Maybe someone else wants to buy it and they just want to open their business in it, and finding those pairings and those relationships.
So that's what you have to try to do?
All the time. Yeah. And it's just like it's an ongoing puzzle and a network and maze of conversations and memories and notes and everything. So I love it.
I bet you do.
It's fun. I think it's fun. And part of the success of St. Stephen, you'd asked about the Civic Center earlier a little bit, but the Civic Center is a key asset, and it's a marking point. So opened in 2015. And Richard started before me keeping a list of all the new businesses that had started in St. Stephen since 2015. Because you get some anecdotal pieces like, it feels like the downtown is, reviving. There's more storefronts. Okay, but what does that mean? How do you quantify that a little bit beyond? It's nice to have the feeling, but then you can't report a feeling, right?
Right.
So what does that drill down into? So Richard started keeping a list, and I've kept it up since he stepped out of the position. And right now, I think we're at a net total of 100 plus new or revamped, like new or expanded businesses that did a significant overhaul or an upgrade or started from scratch. It's amazing. So like when you look at that, that's over 20 businesses a year that we're talking about starting up, and that's net. So if they close out, they're not included in the list.
Right.
So that's just fascinating.
It is.
To see that kind of momentum, and that's so many small businesses. And what's really important to us is to say, yes, every community needs some form of large industry, you know, that, and every community has government services, and that those employ segments of the population. But then to have so much of our population running their own businesses, starting their own businesses, taking initiatives like that. Entrepreneurs. It is like, it's really encouraging to see in a community that this is happening. And part of what Future Stephen hopes is that we're creating a bit of the momentum, maybe a bit of the morale, the idea to say we can do this as a small community, we can look after ourselves, we can try new things, we can, find things that fit our area. And we're just really encouraged by that, to sit back, because we don't have a direct impact in each and every one of those stories. Sometimes we have nothing to do with it. I'll have to double check, but Downey Ford just built its new building and opened. I think Richard was encouraging them along the way and seeing if they needed anything, but I don't think they needed anything from us.
Right.
That was just their own thing, and so that's great. That's exciting.
Speaking of that, not talking about one business over another, but McDonald's came to town. Okay.
Yeah.
Did they do that on their own, or did somebody approach them and say, "Listen, St. Stephen would be a good spot"?
No, that was before my time, so I've got to unravel
That's
that one a little bit.
That's probably not a fair question.
But I think that Future St. Stephen played a role in attracting the developer. So a developer to develop that whole piece. It's called St. Stephen Landing, up above the top of the highway.
Okay.
It's called St. Stephen Landing, technically. And but to develop that whole piece up there. Yeah. So that's an example of bringing in, and so the developer we were talking with chose to approach McDonald's, chose to approach Ultramar. We didn't invite McDonald's specifically, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So, but Future St. Stephen did work with connections to bring Giant Tiger.
Yes.
And that was part of a business gap analysis that we did to say, what are the businesses that are missing? So we did an analysis, and one of the things that came out was you can't buy socks and underwear in St. Stephen.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And so we said, well, what's missing? Okay, so we're missing a store that serves some of those basic needs, right? Yeah. And David Ganong is the one who knows the owner of Giant Tiger, and said, why don't you set up a store in St. Stephen? And he looked at it, he said, I never thought of it, but you're right. It is a fit. So again, that's part of our job is there's people that might want to set up here, but if you don't ask them, then they won't know to come.
What about the Sobeys building, where the Sobeys were?
The Sobeys building?
Yeah.
Getting something in there. We do ask about that one. We've asked Sobeys if they want to come back. So far, they haven't indicated that. We think we do need another grocery store in town. There's lots of people, and the superstore is always full and crowded. And they've got lots of business. I don't think we're going to detract from business from bringing that in.
Right.
So far, we don't have another tenant for that, but we're in dialogue with the company that manages that property. And I had conversations with them a couple months ago and saying, well, you could kind of do this, or you could kind of. It doesn't have to be a Sobeys again. It could be.
Well, I was just going to say it could be repurposed.
Oh,
right?
It could totally be repurposed.
Right.
So they're exploring that, and I feed them some information about what's going on in St. Stephen, which helps them to go, oh, you've got X and X and X momentum. Maybe we'll think about that, and we've got this company or that company that might want to come into that building, because they'll manage companies all across the Maritimes. Right? Or properties across the Maritimes, and to say, well, what's going on? And that's part of our job, to let other people know what's going on in St. Stephen, so then they go, oh, that's what's going on. Okay, well, maybe I want to be a part of that now, right? So, yeah.
So that is so interesting to know. A lot of people say, oh, that's closed, Nobody's doing anything about it. Yes, they are.
We're doing our best.
There's somebody on it.
Yeah, and people would point towards me, but you've got to look behind me, and I've got a very strong board with a lot of people from the business community.
How many on the board?
12 people.
Wow, really?
So we have the mayor and the CAO, and then we have a permanent representative from the Chamber of Commerce and a permanent representative from the Business Improvement Area, or downtown St. Stephen.
Right.
And then the other 8 members are all community members. So, and a lot of them, they've been involved in community initiatives. Right now we've got Bob Brown on. He's the former mayor of St. Stephen.
Yes.
Just lots of different experience that people bring to the table. So we try and pick and say, who are the people that best represent our community and knowing where it might go, and trying to push our community forward. So I'm talking to my board members all the time in the background saying, what's your thought on this? What would we do with this? And they're very active members in this. So I'm just the public eye of it, but there's a lot of work that they help me with. So
what do you find feedback with the virus affecting St. Stephen? Or
it's a both and. It's been hard on businesses. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
They have had to be creative, think about new ways of doing things. Some businesses have really moved to much more of an online presence. And I've heard of some businesses that have really, they've expanded their online presence exponentially because of this. And they just hadn't thought to put that effort into it before, right? Because they say, well, we're more of a storefront, location. But they realized that they had a following of people who then wanted to access their services online as well. So it was really encouraging to them. That's like a positive development of it. You're finding a lot more businesses that maybe had people shopping across the border, or had more people shopping in Fredericton and St. John.
Yes.
They had to shop locally for a while, and then they learned part of what their local businesses have. They said, oh, I didn't know you carried that.
There you go.
I didn't know you carried that. And so even if the border opens long term, they're going to gain a larger share of local demand and local market to say, oh, well, it's important to shop local, and COVID's been hard. I'm going to support my local guy, even if it's $1 cheaper or $2 cheaper across the border. I'm going to continue supporting my local vendor. So that's been a positive development. The flip side is, don't kid yourself for a moment that it is hard work. And people, we very much, we appreciate all of our essential service workers, and we need to keep appreciating them. They put themselves in harm's way every day to look after us and to risk us. Our small business owners are working just as hard. And they are working so hard to keep their businesses open, to try and figure out how to, keep us safe when we go in and shop in them, how to keep their employees employed, if revenues are down currently. So just a note to people to really, tip your hat to your small business community as well, because they are working so hard in the background to keep the services that we all want available to us. And they don't have to. It'd probably be easier sometimes for them to just close up and do something else. But it's what they love. They know it's part of their community, and and we just really value all the effort that the small businesses put into the community.
We're all pulling together.
We got to.
We got to. Kendall, thank you so much. Future St. Stephen's looking pretty good, Kendall, because we know you're on top of it.
We hope so. We hope the future looks good for it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's it. That was Kendall Kadatz. He is the president of Future St. Stephen. I'm John Higgins. This is John Higgins Live, and I'll be back next week. Bye now.